Good morning, everyone. I decided to do something a little bit different for your assignment today. I am going to read it and aloud, and you guys can read along with me, or you can kind of listen to the video and follow along with my thinking process as I am reading. I have chosen this video because of the ties that it has to the historically divided ideology that we have among race in this country, especially with the new case that's going on. Some of you all have done it for your current event yesterday. But this is a pretty recent case that happened, and I am very interested to know what you all think about it, what it means for our country, and what it means for your future. So the title is Woman Faces Prison Because of Law Meant to Suppress Black Voters. So I'm going to begin. A knock at the door brought startling changes for Lanisha Bratcher. Her husband opened the door and the police burst into their North Carolina home. Bratcher says there was a warrant for her arrest, they told her, but Bratcher had no idea what for. Her crime was voting in the 2016 presidential election. Now I'm thinking, how can that be a crime? Bratcher faces up to 19 months in prison because she did not realize she had been stripped of the right to vote. Did you know you can be stripped of your right to vote? Her lawyer says she's being punished based on a Jim Crow era law that was intended to take voting rights from Black Americans. So this next section says punished by a 19th century effort. Bratcher was on probation, a follow-up program of her sentence after being convicted of assault. So assault is where you hit somebody or you do something to somebody, and then she went to jail. North Carolina law says that people convicted of felonies can vote only after they complete their sentences, including probation and parole. So because she was still on probation, she had not technically, according to them, completed her sentence. Documents show that a prosecutor, a lawyer, brought charges against Bratcher, even though state officials said she may have unintentionally voted illegally. So they still want to charge her, even though she didn't know that she did something wrong. The decision also came after a report in which state officials recognized there were problems in the system to inform convicted felons of their voting rights. So they admit that there are problems in this system where convicted felons don't even know that their voting rights have changed, but they still are charging this lady. The state's limit on voting are rooted in a late 19th century effort by North Carolina Democrats to limit the voting power of Black Americans. Since then, North Carolina lawmakers have tweaked or changed the law. However, it still strips felons of their voting rights while they serve sentences. Unconstitutional law still in effect. John Corella, Bratcher's lawyer, said the majority of the people caught up in the law are Black. A law that is intended to racially discriminate against a group is unconstitutional, he said. Corella argues that the goal is to keep Black people from voting. That could make a big difference in North Carolina, a state expected to play a key role in this 2020 election. Bratcher is not sure she'll ever vote again. It seems really dangerous, he said. That's pretty scary to me that somebody is thinking from this incident of going to jail, she may not ever vote again. Bratcher acknowledges she's had a rocky past. In 2013, she and her sister got into a fight with other people, and Bratcher was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. So here's the story of what happened. She has since been working to improve, building a life with her husband and 2 daughters, and trying to get a promotion at work. Records show that Bratcher registered to vote in March 2016, and she said at that time nobody told her she couldn't vote. Later, she went with her mother to vote, saying, "I had no intention to trick anybody." Americans lose the right to vote if they are convicted of a felony in 48 of the 50 states. However, each state has different rules for voting again. The North Carolina law came after the Civil War as a reaction to growing Black political power in the state, says Gary Freeze. So the law came because Black people were becoming powerful in politics. He is a professor at Catawba College in North Carolina. Bratcher's life turned upside down. When lawmakers passed the law, they were open about their racial intent. So they were telling you this is why we're doing this. In 1898, the 1898 Democratic Handbook talked about voting limits to protect the white voters of the state against having their honest votes offset by illegally and fraudulently registered Negro voters. This law was racist in both its language and intent, so they flat out told you. In 1903, Charles Aycock, then governor of the state, said keeping black people from voting was part of solving the Negro problem. This term for black people is considered very offensive today. Corella said the discriminatory law is still at work. Of 441 people investigated for possibly voting with a felony in the 2016 election, 68% were black. That number exceeds or is more than the percentage of black Americans registered to vote and the proportion on probation and parole. At the end of 2016, black people made up about 46% of convicted felons on parole or probation in the state. They made up about 22% of all registered voters. More than 400 convicted felons were suspected of voting in the North Carolina 2016 elections. District attorneys can decide whether to pursue the cases, whether to try to charge them and make them go to jail. They are reviewing charges or pursuing them in about half of these cases. In 2018, 12 felons in North Carolina were prosecuted for illegal voting. The cases against them drew national outrage because they said they didn't know they were ineligible. Getting charged with voter fraud turned Bratcher's life upside down. It took an hour and a half to drive each way for court appearances, and that caused her to miss work. She eventually left her job and said the criminal charge against her made it harder to find a new one. She has 2 daughters, ages 12 and 7, and she doesn't want them to know about her case. However, photos of Bratcher and others have appeared in the news. Her family and friends began calling her, asking her what she had done. The last section is titled, "Walls Came Tumbling Down." "I was at a better place in my life," she said, looking back. "But then the walls came tumbling down." Corella argued in court documents earlier in 2019 that Bratcher's case should be thrown out because the law discriminates against Black Americans. The judge in Bratcher's case could